Michelangelo's interest in the afterlife influenced the content of his second painting for the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo, Divine Artistic Genius, Part 2 of 2. Continue watching to find out more.
Benvenuti fantastici spettatori. That means welcome amazing viewers in Italian. I am Nicoletta. With kind regards, the warm-hearted people of Italy celebrate your compassionate deeds. Thank you for joining us for Michelangelo, Divine Artistic Genius, Part 2 of 2. A leading light of the Italian Renaissance, Michelangelo was known as Il Divino, meaning the Divine One, and is considered one of the greatest artists of all time. A poet, sculptor, and architect, his creations include internationally renowned masterpieces like the famous marble sculpture of King David of Israel and the magnificent biblical painting on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo was also a principal architect involved in constructing one of the Vatican's holiest buildings, St. Peter's Basilica. Michelangelo started gaining fame after creating the Pietà, a beloved sculpture of the Blessed Virgin Mary cradling the body of Lord Jesus Christ. Despite his success, Michelangelo lived humbly, sending much of his earning to his father. In 1501, Michelangelo returned home to his father and brothers. Within months, the 26-year-old artist began the massive task of creating a colossal statue of the biblical hero King David of Israel. While others had tried and failed, Michelangelo was excited to accept the challenge. Michelangelo believed that the figures he carved already existed fully formed within the blocks of stone he worked upon. By studying the raw marble and examining its pattern of fissure, he could sense where the figures left. Then, layer by layer, he would liberate his creation from its rocky enclosure. It took Michelangelo 4 years to complete the awe-inspiring statue of David, carved from a piece of discarded marble that other artists had considered unusable. He was hailed as one of the greatest sculptors who ever lived. Standing more than 5 meters tall and weighing 5.5 metric tons, around 80 times that of the average man, a special vehicle had to be built to transport the statue to where it was positioned in the Piazza della Signoria in Florence. David became one of the most famous statues in the world. Today it is housed in the Galleria dell'Accademia. His Holiness Pope Julius II assigned Michelangelo a project to build him a tomb. Delighted at the opportunity, Michelangelo designed a grandiose monument that included no less than 40 life-sized statues. To his dismay, the project was paused, and instead, in 1508, Pope Julius II gave Michelangelo what may have been the most challenging assignment of his life, to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. The chapel was used for great ceremonies such as electing and inaugurating new popes. At the time, Michelangelo considered himself solely a sculptor and did not feel that he was qualified as a painter. Yet he did have some experience with painting. For instance, the only surviving panel painting by Michelangelo, the Doni Tondo, also known as the Holy Family, is thought to have been made around 1507. The panel is currently exhibited in the Uffizi Gallery, in its original ornate wooden frame designed by Michelangelo himself. Reluctant at first, Michelangelo eventually signed a contract to carry out the work on the Sistine Chapel. The vaulted ceiling rose to 20.7 meters high, and the area to be painted spanned about 1,110 square meters. It was an enormous undertaking. Although he had several assistants, Michelangelo limited their help to menial tasks and painted almost the entire surface by himself. Standing on a scaffolding for hours at a time was physically taxing. The extent of his bodily and mental struggles was expressed in one of his famous poems written to his friend Giovanni da Pistoia, when the author was painting the vault of the Sistine Chapel. Despite immense difficulties, Michelangelo persevered. Finally, on November 1st, 1512, Michelangelo's creation was revealed to the world. The result was miraculous. The surface of the ceiling had been covered with 33 panels containing 343 painted figures. They depict 9 stories from the Book of Genesis, including the creation of Adam, several scenes of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the Deluge, and the prophet Jeremiah. Against his will, one of the most respected sculptors of the Renaissance had become one of the most celebrated painters as well. At the age of 37, he was hailed by his contemporaries as Il Divino, the Divine One. From 1515 to 1534, the son and grandson of Lorenzo the Magnificent, Their Holiness Pope Leo X and Pope Clement VIII, commissioned Michelangelo to build the Sagrestia Nuova in the Medici chapels and the Laurentian Library for the Basilica of San Lorenzo. Both of these works were excellent examples of Michelangelo's diverse skill. He designed the interior of the library and its vestibule with such vibrant effect that it seemed as the predecessor of Baroque architecture. When His Holiness Pope Julius II passed away 4 months later, Michelangelo was filled with remorse, having developed friendship with his kindred spirit. He restarted work on a tomb for the Pope. In 1516, he completed the centerpiece, the glorious statue of Moses. Gentle viewers, we'll be right back after a brief message here on Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Michelangelo, Divine Artistic Genius, Part 2 of 2. Following his impressive achievements, Michelangelo became one of the most famous and sought-after artists in Europe. Despite a heavy workload from commissions, Michelangelo undertook one of his largest projects in 1519. A tomb chapel for the Medici family. He periodically worked on this project over a span of 15 years. Michelangelo designed the chapel as an elaborate domed mausoleum for the Medici family, but for 3 months, due to political upheaval in Florence, he went into hiding underneath the building and filled the walls with drawings. Some were of himself, some of Lord Jesus Christ, and some were sketched reproduction of images from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. The room with the drawings were not discovered until 1976 by the director of the Museum of the Medici Chapel. In 1534, the Medici Chapel was unveiled, and Michelangelo returned to the Sistine Chapel. His Holiness Pope Paul III had commissioned him to paint another fresco on the wall behind the altar. Again, Michelangelo was not enthusiastic to carry out this project. During his years of work on the huge painting, Michelangelo met Vittoria Colonna, a widowed noblewoman and an intellectual. Victoria's passion was the reform of the Catholic Church. Michelangelo wrote over 300 poems, many of which were written for Vittoria. He also sent her some of his most moving drawings. Michelangelo's interest in the afterlife influenced the content of his second painting for the Sistine Chapel. The finished mural, The Last Judgment, took him 7 years to complete. Commissioned by His Holiness Pope Clement VII in 1534, the fresco depicts the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ and his judgment of the souls. Pope Paul III was so overwhelmed by the painting that he fell to his knees in awe and begged God for lenience on his own judgment day. Michelangelo continued to search for new artistic challenges, and in 1546 he undertook an architectural project, the St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. Even though it was not completed by the time Michelangelo passed away, the central plan was his, and to this day the Great Dome of St. Peter's Basilica remains one of the most famous and replicated landmarks in all of architecture. His Holiness Pope Paul III commissioned the last fresco painting by Michelangelo, the Crucifixion of St. Peter, which portrayed St. Peter the Apostle being raised to the cross by Roman soldiers. The faces of the people displayed their pain and suffering. It is housed in the Cappella Paolina in the Apostolic Palace of the Vatican City. Michelangelo passed away on February 18, 1564, at the age of 88, leaving a remarkable legacy of extraordinary creations that continue to inspire generation after generation. He was the first Western artist to have biographies published during his lifetime, and today Michelangelo is considered one of the foremost artists of the High Renaissance. After his passing, Duke Cosimo de' Medici commissioned Giorgio Vasari to build a memorial for Michelangelo. Giorgio Vasari constructed an impressive tomb with a family altar next to it. The tomb is a mixture of marble sculpture and fresco painting, with a bust of Michelangelo and 3 figures representing painting, sculptures, and architecture. Michelangelo once said, "Death and love are the 2 wings that bear the good man to heaven." With awe and appreciation, we celebrate the life of Michelangelo, who, through his artistic genius, his dedication to perfection, and his deep faith, helped beautify our world and showed us the mastery and wonders that can be accomplished through our God-given talents. Noble viewers, it's been a pleasure to have your gracious company today.